sat at the far end of the table, fork hovering above my plate, untouched, as if my presence were a technicality rather than a fact. Laughter rolled back and forth across the table, warm and loud, skipping over me with practiced ease. My brother was the center of it all, radiant in borrowed confidence, his fiancée glowing in soft pink, admired and celebrated by everyone in the room. Everyone except her. She leaned closer, her smile faltering, eyes narrowing with sudden curiosity. "Wait, you're..." I met her gaze and smiled. Calm. Unrushed. The room froze. My mother stopped chewing mid-bite. Conversations collapsed into silence. For the first time that night, I wasn't invisible. It was almost amusing. They had spent years polishing a story about me. Too slow, too weak, too insignificant to matter. A convenient failure. And yet here I was, seated quietly at the edge, having already rewritten the ending. It hadn't always been this way. There were nights long ago when my brother and I shared a cramped bedroom, whispering in the dark, laughing over stolen sweets and impossible dreams. I loved him then. I trusted him. My parents never did, but that didn't matter to me. Not until betrayal sharpened everything into focus. At first, it arrived in pieces. A deleted message recovered by accident. A conversation that stopped when I entered the room. A glance that lingered too long. Slowly, painfully, the truth assembled itself. My brother hadn't stolen money or status from me. He'd stolen something far more intimate. My opportunity, my place, the life I had been moving toward while believing we were walking side by side. And he smiled as he took it. The shock didn't break me. Heartbreak tried, but tears don't build anything worth keeping. Anger knocked loudly, too loudly, and I knew better than to open that door. So I chose something far more dangerous. I did nothing. I watched. I listened. I waited. While he thrived in the spotlight, I worked in the margins. I studied his habits, his weaknesses, the arrogance he wore like armor. I rebuilt the future that should have been mine, piece by piece, out of sight. I found allies he didn't even know existed. People who valued competence over bloodlines, discipline over charm. Lawyers. Investors. Strategists. People who noticed skill without needing spectacle. Then came the adjustments. Small, precise. A deal that unraveled just enough to raise eyebrows. A shift in perception that made confidence look like recklessness. Contracts began landing on my desk at exactly the right moment, while his started coming back with questions attached. I never raised my voice. I never rushed. I moved only when the outcome was already decided. Months passed. He grew comfortable. Careless. Pride has a way of dulling instinct, and I knew his better than he knew his own. By the time he sensed something was wrong, the structure beneath him had already weakened. Financial scrutiny crept in quietly. Social admiration thinned into polite distance. Doubt began circling him from people who once applauded without thinking. And now, this dinner. His engagement. The peak of his self-admiration. Laughter filled the room, unaware of the silent storm seated at the corner of the table. His fiancée looked at me again, really looked this time. Recognition bloomed across her face, sharp and unmistakable. "Wait, you're..." Her voice carried just enough to turn every head. I gave a small nod. That was all it took. The air shifted. My brother's face drained of color, his practiced confidence cracking under sudden understanding. He had assumed I would always remain easy to overlook, safely irrelevant. He had mistaken silence for weakness. But power that doesn't announce itself is the most dangerous kind. "You," my mother breathed, her voice trembling, not with anger, not with fear, but with something she had never offered me before. Recognition. In that moment, I had outmaneuvered all of them. Their expectations. Their favoritism. Their certainty about who mattered and who didn't. My brother realized who had taken his place the way prey realizes too late it's already caught, stunned, suspended, unable to escape. The table fell completely silent. Laughter evaporated. Every guest felt the shift, the weight of someone who had been underestimated not casually, but catastrophically. I leaned back in my chair, relaxed. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't messy. It was clean, precise, invisible until the exact moment it became undeniable. He opened his mouth to speak, to defend, to argue, to reclaim control, but reality has a way of robbing words of their power. Step by step, without ever noticing, he had lost. I watched him shrink beneath the realization. His fiancée glanced at him, doubt flickering for the first time, then her eyes found me again, brief, sharp, understanding. In that single look, she knew who truly held the room. I lifted my glass and took a slow sip, savoring the silence. I didn't gloat. That's for people who arrive unprepared. I simply existed in the truth, letting it settle where it belonged. That night, I reclaimed more than respect. I reclaimed my story, my identity, my presence. They had told the world I was a failure. They had underestimated me one final time. Everything I built in the shadows. And when the light finally shifted, it found me first. My brother, my betrayer, could only watch. Some victories are whispered. Some revenge never announces itself. And some moments require nothing more than calm, steady presence. The room remained frozen. But I was free.